experiment is supposed to address the evidence question, not the belief question. And then we'll conclude with hard questions about the hard problem of consciousness. So here is the hard problem in many examples. So the hard problem of consciousness, according to Chalmers, is that it arises from trying to explain why human beings and other organisms do have subjective experience. And the easy problem of consciousness are those which can be explained by neuroscience and neural mechanism. As I said, Jackson's thought experiment, what Mary didn't know, will play a role. So what is that example? It is a thought experiment, please keep it in mind. So the thought experiment is that, so here is Mary, who is a brilliant neuroscientist, knows everything one needs to know about theories, light, wavelengths and kinds of stuff. But Mary always spent her life inside a dark chamber, no exposure to any color. So, but Mary knows everything about the theories about the light. So one day Mary emerges from her dark chamber, black and white room, and she experiences what it's like to see a red light. So, so the Jacksons, that Mary thought experiment, what she said, how it goes like that is that this experience, that's the first experience Mary has about what it's like to see a red color, that experience cannot be entailed by knowing all the theories of physics. So this subjective experience of what it's like to see a red color is what is the subjective experience. Each of us, like, you know, coffee or aroma in the morning, each of us, some of you have so this subjective experience cannot be explained away by knowing all the theories about colors and kinds of things. So, so now hard problem continues. So Chalmers, it's a quote from Chalmers. Chalmers writes, let me quote, why that experience to experience the color red does not go away after those neural correlates are. Chalmers asks, why should brain processes give rise to conscious experiences? Again, continue with Chalmers. Why don't they just go on in the dark without any subjective experience at all? No one knows. This is with I2SI this. So what is the hard problem? As I said, continue. So Chalmers asserts that there is a gap between the subjective experience of what it's like to see a red color, and that is the subjective experience, first person subjective experience, and the third person science expressed to neuroscience. Neuroscience, the third person neuroscience cannot explain what it's like to be in a given mental state. And so the subjective experience cannot be explained by the third person neuroscience. Hence, the failure to explain the subjective experience of consciousness is what makes the hard problem hard. So now we are going to talk about sketch about methodological liberalism. So why we need that? So let me tell you that Chalmers focuses on the entailment relation between Mary's knowing all the theories of physics regarding the light and the color. From that, it does not follow that Mary can explain. Mary is the ability to explain the subjective experience of what it's like to see red. So that means what is like to see red cannot be deduced from Mary's knowledge about all the theories of color. So basically the entailment idea is that what follows from what. So that's the core idea. And Chalmers wants to argue that that experience Mary has, the subjective experience, what it's like to see red, that does not follow from knowing all the theories about physics, about light. So the entailment relation is what Chalmers focuses on, wants to show that actually Mary's experience does not follow from knowing all the theories. So what we are going to do in our paper, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to incorporate something called likelihood function, causal modelings, and others to enrich our tools of statistical tools that goes beyond entitlement account. So that is what I'll be doing in the first now little bit. It is little could be little technical, but the idea is not difficult. So if you do not follow everything, it doesn't matter. You can catch me during the question period. So what I'm going to argue is that entailment is neither necessary nor sufficient for developing an account of scientific inference. So why it is not sufficient? So sufficiency means if entailment is there, then this is what should be the case. But so I'm going to argue even though entailment is there, there is something is not right. So it cannot be a sufficient condition. So whenever there is an entailment, like A implies B, B implies C, then A must imply C. So this is the property called transitivity property. It's a very fundamental rule of entailment. But what we are going to argue, or what I'm going to argue, is that entailment which rests on the idea of transitivity, that transitivity rule does not always hold in some of the scientific reasoning. And even though it does not hold in the scientific reasoning, see, still that's tools for developing scientific reasoning is absolutely fine. So, so here is the transitivity rule. If A is more probable than B, and B is more probable than C, then by entailment logic it follows that A must be more probable than C. So that's the transitivity rule. And so by using Bradley Efron, is a very well-known statistician. So he has given a counterexample to argue that in the case of probability theory, that entailment relation does not necessarily hold. And so I have a dice example, 4 dice, and Ovishek was kind enough to do the table for my talk, but I'm not going to talk about this failure of transitivity using this dice example. So just assume that transitivity fails, and if you have any question, we can go through it in the question period. So this dice example seems to shows that the transitivity relation does not hold. What is transitivity relation? One more time. So A is more probable than B, and B is more probable than C, then the entailment rule from entailment rule it follows A is more probable than C. But this dice example seems to show, that transitivity doesn't hold. So even though transitivity does not hold, it is not a completely a bad thing, scientific inference we have, because even though it's a very basic fundamental rule, but probability theory, it does not follow that, but still probability theory is very important for developing scientific reasoning. So now, methodological liberalism and likelihoodism. So, so one of the concepts of likelihood function is that does the data, or do the data support the model? So likelihood function provides an answer to the question, does the data provide support for the model? And this likelihood function, when you are comparing 2 models, data supporting one model over the other, related to background information, auxiliaries, and all those kinds of things. This activities of data support from one model over the other, that relationship is actually going beyond the entailment relation. Although the relationship between a model and the data and the model generating data generating model, that relationship, data and model, is an entailment relation. But when you compare 2 models, how the data supports a model over the one model over the other, this entailment the whole package is not necessarily is captured in the entailment relation. It goes beyond entailment relation. And violating entailment relation does not necessarily make it unscientific. And also the likelihood function does not satisfy probability theory, though likelihood is a very central concept that is central to whether you're a Bayesian or not. So, so having said that, so let's move to the other part, is called causal modeling and quasi-Laplacian. So one of the pioneers of the causal modeling, his name is very much alive, very active, 89 years old. His name is Judy Pearl. He's a computer scientist, but in my area he was awarded the Lakotosh Award. So he developed something called do calculus, and he calls that our world is a quasi-Laplacian. And by Laplacian he means that like a Laplacian demon who knows all possible combinations of different events and their unfolding of the events. The demon knows everything what's going to happen. But we are epistemic agent with limited capabilities. So we do not have all those capabilities to know all possible combinations, all those things. So it is not, it cannot be fully deterministic because we do not know all those things. But Paul thinks we can, the world is quasi-deterministic, not probabilistic. Niels Bohr and Copenhagen, Niels Bohr and the quantum physicists talk about. So Paul is much more on the deterministic side. So, but to propose a causal model about a problem, to make it deterministic, Paul allows the modeler, that means the person, investigator who builds the model, to incorporate his or her subjective background information to play a role. Now, so Paul does say that when an investigator building the causal model brings a causal model, brings his causal model, and brings his or her subjective experience, then the causal modeler is supposed to is required to support his assumption when he or she is challenged. But the problem is that that bringing own subjective experience kind of exposing causal model to errors. So there is a possibility of error. So Pearl developed something like probability theory. He developed something called do calculus. He really developed the whole thing. It is a monotonic, hence it is really aligned with the logical entailment relationship. But since he is allowing subjective agents, bringing his or her own experience to build the causal model, so it is possibility remains that the error could infect the whole stuff. So now the causal model, according to Pearl, it has to be transitive. So if and here is an example, a billiard player hits a ball A, a billiard player hits a ball A, causing it to hit the ball B, causing it to communicate its motion into ball C, which then drops into the pocket. So this whole transitivity, according to Pearl, is the very core of causal modeling. And the justification is that it's just intuitive. Pearl and other philosophers talk about that. But the question is that deductive logic actually violates transitivity. So here's an example. If it rains in the neighborhood, then its corresponding part will be wet. And if its corresponding part will be wet, then we'll have fire in its neighborhood. Then if it rains, then in the neighborhood, its corresponding part will have fire. It is a valid argument, deductively valid argument, no question about it. But it does not represent causal reasoning. Because causal reasoning, the temporal relationship that we have, dimension of causal reasoning, such as rain comes first and should not be followed by fire, that obeys the law of transitivity. So, so deductive logic, which is a full of entailment relationship, represents the entailment relation, violates transitivity, but the causal modeling rests on transitive relationship. So let's summarize the section. So what we are arguing that entailment is neither necessary nor sufficient for building scientific reasoning. To be able to make our tools adequately powerful, so that according to methodological liberalism, we must go beyond entailment by incorporating probability theory, likelihood function, and causal modeling. And all through our talk, I will be making use of those things. So that is the end of section 1. So now, so I mentioned that Richard Royal, a statistician, introduces actually a philosophical distinction. So even though he is not a straightforward philosopher, but he makes the distinction between evidence and belief and evidence. So it's a very intuitive distinction, and I'll make use of the distinction in our talk, because I'm going to argue that the hard problem of consciousness conflicts belief evidence distinction. So what is the distinction? So now I returned to my university, about to start teaching. I lost some weight. I'm running fever. I met my doctor, my regular doctor, and he suggested that I need to. I just returned from India. Whatever is the reason, but anyway, he asked me to take my X-ray done, and my X-ray comes out to be positive. So, given the data that my X-ray came out to be positive, one could ask the question: what should an agent believe about Prasanta having tuberculosis and to what degree? That's a belief question, which is different from the evidence question, which is: does the data that my X-ray provide evidence for the hypothesis that Prasanta has tuberculosis and against his alternative, and how much? So the first question, given the data, what should I believe about Prasanta having tuberculosis and to what degree, is a belief question, whereas the second question is: do the data, X-ray, positive X-ray, do that positive X-ray provide evidence that Prasanta has tuberculosis against his alternative, and how much? Now the first question is a belief question. Second question is an evidence question, and you can see they're very different questions. And answering one does not necessarily answer the second, and answering the second does not necessarily answer the first one, because they're conceptually different questions. So now, here's the formalism. So we have two accounts. The account of confirmation. Account of confirmation says that that an agent or one should believe a hypothesis if the probability of Prasanta having tuberculosis given his X-ray is higher than Prasanta having tuberculosis. If that probability is little high, then one should believe a hypothesis. Excuse me. Believe the hypothesis that Prasanta has tuberculosis, given the data. And how much one should believe? It depends on how much is the difference between the posterior and prior. So if the difference is small, then you have a weak confirmation. If the difference is very high, then you will have a strong confirmation. Now, so that is the account of confirmation. Now, an account of confirmation is devised to respond to the belief question, or confirmation question, you can call it too. So account of evidence says that data provide evidence for H1 that Prasanta has tuberculosis against this alternative that Prasanta doesn't have. If and only if the probability of the data that Prasanta has tuberculosis given Prasanta, your probability that Prasanta X-ray came out to be positive given Prasanta has tuberculosis divided by probability that X-ray, positive X-ray given Prasanta doesn't have the disease. That ratio is greater than 1, then we can say that data provide evidence for Prasanta having tuberculosis and against his alternative. The first account of confirmation is subjective. Why? I'm going to explain a little bit more. And the account of evidence is objective. So now account of confirmation continues. So again, account of confirmation said an agent should believe the hypothesis that Prasanta has tuberculosis, given the data, if that value is higher than Prasanta having tuberculosis. Now, as I said, that probability lies in between 0 and 1. Weak and strong confirmation depends on the difference between these two values. And this account is sensitive to prior probabilities, because to calculate that, we need to have that prior probability. And that prior probability is dependent on, sensitive to agent's subjective degree of belief. So therefore, there is a possibility, quite like possibility, that account of confirmation or account of confirmation is subjective. Whereas the account of evidence is not subjective at all. So D provide evidence for H1 if and only if the likelihood ratio is greater than 1. Likelihood ratio is that what? So probability of test came out to be positive given Prasanta's tuberculosis, background information, divide by probability, test came out to be positive, given Prasanta does not have a disease, and the background information. If this ratio is greater than 1, then it should provide evidence for the first hypothesis over the other. Now, why it is objective? Because data provide evidence for one hypothesis over the other, independent of what an agent believes about the hypothesis and the data. So that's why it's completely objective account about the relationship between data and the two models. So now we can continue with the tuberculosis example, and so the tuberculosis example I worked on with the numbers showed that even though you have a weak confirmation that Prasanta has tuberculosis, but you have a strong evidential support for Prasanta having tuberculosis as against an alternative. But instead of going through that, I will give you two examples, intuitive examples. So first example is that where confirmation prevails over evidence, and the other example I'll show that where evidence prevails over confirmation. So they're all real examples, and they're all my examples. 2012 in Italy, there was an experiment made called Opera, and it is nothing to do with really Opera, but actually it's an abbreviation version of the whole experiment. So what they found, that neutrino, a small particle, were found to travel faster than the speed of light, and they found that evidence, that data supporting for that hypothesis that neutrinos, subatomic particle, traveling faster than the speed of light, the evidence is like almost 1 in 1 million chance they could be wrong. So now, had it been the case, this would be a momentous thing, because this goes against the basic fundamental principles of 20th century physics, that is, light cannot travel faster than the speed of light. So the phenomenologists are those who try to combine the experimental result and the theory, so they are called, in particle physics, phenomenologists. So they said, well, it would have been really momentous had it been the case that if the experiment really showed that neutrinos are traveling faster than the speed of light. But we said, well, we are not sure yet. We means, the theoretician, the phenomenologist, we are not sure yet. We have a scientific community believe that, so it is so much well entrenched that special theory of relativity, one of the postulates, that light cannot travel faster than the speed of light. And here, looks like you guys are saying that neutrinos are traveling faster than the speed of light. So now, within a couple of 3 months, they found out there is a glitch in the experiment. So there was a huge evidential support for the theory that neutrinos are traveling faster than the speed of light. But here the scientific community, the confirmation part, overwhelmed, dominate over the evidential part. So at least it shows that they are not the same concept, they are very different concepts. The second one was around 1956, around that time, two theoretical physicists, Lee and Young. So they provide a theoretical background to argue, to show that parity is not conserved. So what is parity? Very simple idea, I mean, physics could be different, but the parity is that suppose you are in an idealized situation, you're flipping a coin, a fair coin, 1,000, 1 million, whatever is that. If you keep on flipping in an idealized situation, you will see almost close to 50-50 ratio of head and tail. And that's called, in nature is, parity is conserved, nature is symmetrical. So there is no handedness in nature. But what that theoretical work argued is that actually nature has handedness. So nature is not symmetrical. And they argued that weak interaction in the beta decay actually, that parity is really not conserved. Nature has left-handed or right-handed, whatever you want to call. So now, around 1956 or 57, I forgot exactly the year. So there was a particle physics conference in University of Rochester, and Pauli was supposed to attend that conference. He attended that, but he said I want to bet that parity must be conserved because it's such a fundamental law, it cannot be violated. But within 3, 4, or 5 years after that, Chinese experimental physicist from Columbia University, showed by experiment that actually parity is, in weak interaction, parity is not constant. So here, evidence kind of dominates over the scientific, scientist belief. Especially, Paul is a huge towering figure. So here are two cases try to show that why evidence question and confirmation question, why they are two different issues, and they are conceptually different concepts. So let's now so what I argued that there are two different questions, and answering one does not necessarily answering the first one. I'm going to say much more on that detail. But under two conditions, we can go a response to an account of confirmation will provide a response to an account of evidence, and a response to an evidence question will provide a response to a belief question if two conditions satisfied. If H and H2 are mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. Actually, we'll see all through the hard question, this condition is satisfied. But the second one is that data must be the same when you're comparing two theories. Okay? So we can go from an answer to the belief question to an answer to the evidence question. And we can, from an answer to an evidence question to an answer to a belief question, so long if we satisfy these two conditions. Each is necessary condition, they both have to be satisfied. If one of them is not satisfied, then we cannot go from one from the other. Clear? So belief question and evidence question are different questions. Answering one does not necessarily lead to the answering of the second one, and vice conversely. But we can go from answering one to the other, provided we satisfy those two conditions. Okay? And that is, there is a theorem, simplified theorem. This theorem says that we can go from the confirmation account to the evidence account. Is a biconditional if those two conditions satisfy. Okay? All right. So now we are done with the second part. Let's talk about the hard problem. So the hard problem and the conflation of belief and evidence distinction. So this is a quote I found in Chalmers. I really like the quote. So this is a quote from Chalmers. A read experience plays a role in constituting a belief that one is having a read experience, for example. If so, there is no causal distance between the experience and the belief, unquote. So the no, I criticize it.
Is it okay when some people online are asking if you, because they can't hear it.
Oh, they cannot hear?
Online.
Oh.
So maybe if you can just plug it somewhere.
We have someone who is listening from the Barbados.
I don't know.
Oh, where?
So they are saying Barbados in the
Maybe
Caribbean.
put it in your pocket.
And
I will drop down dead if somebody is watching from Barbados. But anyway, so just hold on a little.
Maybe because otherwise if
or
you put it in the
put it in your pocket. Yeah.
it may cause some static. That is what is happening.
Instead of the
Can you just
mobile
fix it and
phone.
see if it does not move?
It will move because I'm moving.
So maybe just hold it in your hand. If that is okay.
Yeah. Okay.
sorry about
That's a Newtonian law, right?
Relative to you, we are fixing the frame of reference.
Okay. All right. So again, let me quote from Chalmers. A read experience plays a role in constituting a belief that one is having read experience, for example. If so, there is no causal distance between the experience and the belief. So basically, what you already understood what he's saying, but I'm just paraphrasing. And the paraphrase is something like that. So I am having some experience of having the read experience of the color red. And it is the experience, and I am the one who experiences that. So there are two things, right? My experience, and I am the one who experiences, who has the subjective experience of the color red. So Chalmers, Chalmers thinks there is no, Mary believe or experience that she has a subjective conscious experience of the color red, and to what degree? Obviously the answer is yes. The subjective probability that the hypothesis is true, that Mary experiences or has a subjective experience of the color red is high, depending on whatever probability Mary assigns to H1. So now, in contrast to the belief question, evidence question asks kindly look at that. So evidence question asks, do triggered neural correlates, which are the data, provide evidence for Mary to have something it is like to see read against his alternative hypothesis? And the response to evidence question, Chalmers thinks, is obviously categorical no. Okay? So, so what is going on? So what I did, again, I will skip all the technical stuff. I don't think we need that. So what I did is that I formulated this Mary's experience in terms of theory, in the case of belief question, in the case of evidence question. So I'll just say one or two things, but basically we can what do you call, ignore that, and we'll come to what is going on. So D1 is the Mary's subjective experience of what it's like to see read. This is, I'm trying to answer the belief question, subjective consciousness. H1 is the Mary's experience, subjective experience of something it is like to see read. And H2 is nothing but the denial of H1. The denial of H1 is, H1 is, this is the H1, so denial. So belief question asks, do the data confirm H1? If so, then what degree? The counter confirmation provides an answer. So, and the next slide, I try to explain by probability theory why the answer to the belief question is definitely yes, and its probability is very high, almost close to 1. So here is the evidence question. So here is the data. Data is triggered neural correlates, that is identifying a brain mechanism that leads to classify the stimulus as a read experience. And H1, triggered neural correlates are evidence for the fact that Mary has subjective experience of something it is like to see read, and H2 is the falsity of H1. So evidence question asks, do the data means triggered neural correlates provide evidence for H1, that is H1, against his alternative H2? If so, and then how strong is the strength of evidence? So the evidential account, evidential question, brain mechanism continue. So we agree with Chalmers that neuroscience cannot answer the belief question right at this moment, perhaps never. He thinks that the hard problem consciousness arises because neuroscience fails to address the hard problem of consciousness, like what is like to experience the color red, and this in turn is what makes the hard problem hard. So, Chalmers, no one knows, suggesting that science such as neuroscience cannot provide an answer to the belief question, how the subject experiences the color red, is to conflate the belief question and evidence question. Because belief question is what Chalmers is asking, and neuroscience is interested in the evidence question. So expecting the neuroscience will respond to the belief question is to conflate the two questions. An agent's experience of seeing color red pertains to what an agent subjectively experiences of belief. The triggered neural correlates are the common data for two competing hypotheses insofar as the evidence question is concerned. So evidence question again, do the data provide evidence for the hypothesis that Mary has a conscious experience of something that it is like to see read as against its alternative hypothesis, the denial of the first hypothesis? Each question is distinct. Belief question is different from the evidence question is different from the belief question. A response to one does not necessarily lead to the response to the other, and its converse is also true. Therefore, to ask for a response to the evidence question from a response to the belief question is to conflict belief question and evidence question. Again, to ask for a response for the evidence question from a response to belief question is to conflate the belief question and evidence question. So there is a response to the belief question, but to expect, because we have a response to the belief question, therefore we must have a response to an evidence question, that is to conflate the evidence question with belief question. So to recap, so two meta-hypotheses for each, belief and evidence. For the issue of belief, evidence bears on whether or not conscious experience of the sort in question, and evidence does not. And for the case of evidence, there is evidence that a conscious experience had occurred, and in the form of neural images, which would enable us to attribute it to even to other animals capable of reporting it. So it's a very different type of third-person ascription we are doing. So now a thought experiment and evident question. So now we are focusing on the thought experiment we call Mary Star thought experiment, which we propose in light of or taking some insight from Mary experiment Jackson proposed, and you will see what this Mary Star thought experiment is doing. So Mary Star's thought experiment is motivated by the Mary experiment, which is again motivated by plausibility, causal reasoning, which we are going to talk about that. So it is not logically impossible to think that when Mary emerges or comes out from the black and white room or the dark chamber, there's a revelation occurs where Mary experiences the red color. But we do not think that is at all, it is logically possible, but we do not think that is plausible, because that's not the setting of the whole experiment, thought experiment. So it is logically possible that at the same time Mary can have a revelation, but what you are saying, we tend to disregard this logical possibility of such a revelation happening simultaneously, because there is no causal connection between the two distinct events. Something revealed to her and her immediate experiencing color red for the first time. So we will ignore that case because it's not motivated by the plausibility or causal reasoning. So now a little bit of the causal reasoning, we touched on it before the work of Julia Power. So the thought experiment, the Mary Star thought experiment is actually motivated, is to maybe conducting observational studies where subjects are not randomized. And in observational studies, what you do, people usually observe the effect of a risk factor, diagnostic test or treatment, which are related to the occurrence of an event. So like Mary in the initial part of the experiment, in the Mary Star experiment, he is yet to be exposed to the color red. So what we are doing, we want to compare the repeated Mary Star EEGs before exposure to make sure that we are receiving the same EEG result with her EEG after she will be exposed to the color red. So we have not exposed Mary Star to the color red, and then we'll expose Mary Star to color and compare the result. So Mary Star experiment and the causal consideration continue. So consider that we also have an extensive record of both colorblind and non-colorblind who are exposed to the color red. Thus we have multiple reports of EEG revealing experiences of the color red. Then we can compare EEG reports of Mary Star before she is exposed to red color with the EEG after she is exposed to red color. So the goal of causal modelers is to tease out consideration from observation studies. That's why the causal modeling is so important. So where we cannot use randomized trials and kinds of things, but they still, from observational studies, we still want to tease out causal consideration. And Pearl's 3 steps of causation are intended to do exactly that, tease out causal consideration from observation studies. So he talks about 3 ladders of causation. He kept harping on the word ladders, but ladders is not the right word. I don't know why he used it, but it's a small criticism of Pearl. So he actually means 3 steps of causal ladder. So the first step is to observe the association, the EEG report of Mary Star before she is exposed to red colors. The second step is that we intervening in the process. We are now exposing Mary Star to the color red. Okay, and the third step is the counterfactual reasoning. Counterfactual reasoning is that if no exposure to color red occur, then there will be no conscious experience of red. So these are the 3 steps. First, we see the association. Mary Star is not exposed to any color, so you see what's going on with the EEG before she is exposed to red color. Then red color is exposed to her. That's the intervention process. And third is the counterfactual reasoning, which goes, if no exposure to color red would occur, then there will be no conscious experience of color red. So now we have now a record of Mary Star not being exposed to red color. For the sake of argument, we can assume that it's not just one Mary Star, but we have many Mary Star of like that not being exposed to red color, and then record of them being exposed to red color with the use of EEG. The reason we are going to do that, just we want to make sure that it's not a fluke. So rationale for keeping such record before and after they are exposed to the color rate is to make sure that the EEG of Mary star are not a fluke, and similar to the records for those Mary star type people. Scenario is intended to provide a causal explanation of Mary star experience of the color rate due to the exposure of color rate for the first time. So now, so what it happens is that Mary star thought experiment tracks Mary star's conscious experience of seeing red for the first time. What is recorded is the conscious experience of color rate. According to Chalmers, consciousness occurs when there is an ability to have a first person experience that there is something it is like to be in that system. So now, here there is something something like to be for Mary star when she is seeing the red color. If it is the case that Mary star experience of consciousness is successfully tracked and recorded, then it is at least logically possible and plausible for a causal explanation for consciousness. So reconstruction of Mary star case provides us with more evidence for an explanation of why Mary star experiences something that is like to see the color red. So now, further consequences of Mary star thought experiment. So Mary star thought experiment shows that in Mary star case, only the evidence question is to answer. So the answering evidence question does not necessarily provide a response to the belief question Chalmers is interested in. So remember, Mary star thought experiment addresses the evidence question, but addressing evidence question does not lead us to the addressing the belief question. Why not? We should be able to go and answering belief question to answering a evidence question and answering evidence question to answering a belief question, provided two conditions are satisfied. But one of them is that they have to be mutually exclusive, and the second is that the data have to be the same. But the condition for the data for both hypotheses must be the same is disobeyed. But because the data are not the same in both cases, in the Mary belief question, it's Mary's own experience is what is the data. But in the case of evidence question, is the triggered neural correlates are the evidence. So we cannot go from answering evidence question to answering a belief question. So basically in Mary star thought experiment shows there is only evidence question to be asked, and for which neuroscience can offer a response. Hard question about consciousness. We are almost, thank you for your patience, we are almost done, so you will be happy very soon. So hard question about consciousness. Lessons from methodological liberalism, which I proposed, where my aim was to relax the restrictive requirement that only entailment has to be there, but I'm saying we need something more than entailment. We need probabilistic reasoning, likelihood function, causal modeling. So the belief question about subjective experience is, given the data of Mary's subjective experience, should Mary experience that she has a subjective experience, subjective conscious experience of what the color read and to what degree? Chalmers' answer is yes to it. We agree with Chalmers about it. The evidence question, by contrast, asks, do triggered neural correlates, which are the data, provide a causal explanation for Mary to have something it is like to see read against his alternative theory? His response is 2, while ours is yes. So hard question continued. So each question is conceptually different from the other. We showed only in special cases a response to belief question leads to a response to the evidence question, and a response to evidence question will lead to a response to belief question. But none holds in our argument. Chalmers points out that a failure of neuroscience to be unable to address the hard problem of consciousness. On reflection, should you consider it to be a failure of neuroscience to be able to address it? Now, does addressing the belief question about subjective experience of consciousness address the evidence question about neural correlates and causal explanation? Does addressing the evidence question does addressing the evidence question about neural correlates and causal explanation address the belief question about subject experience of consciousness? To each question, answer is no. So, conclusion. We discussed hard and easy problems of consciousness. Hard problem is the explanation of the subjective experience of what is like to see ray. And the easy problems is what can be solved by neural correlates, neural mechanisms, and all those kinds of things. So we advocated methodological liberalism about probability function, likelihood function, and causal model to enrich the whole account of scientific inference. We provide a formalism to distinguish between belief and evidence. Contrary to Chalmers, we argued that the Hud problem conflicts the belief-evidence distinction because they partner to issues about belief. When evidence question partners to consciousness issue neuroscience can answer the question. So thank you. So here is the research is partially supported by the National Science Foundation grant, and this is the grant number. And I presented the paper at Society for Exact Philosophy in November, and got some help. And of course, Abhishek very patiently, kindness and willingness to help me when I needed his help, assistance. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much, Professor Bandyopadhyay. I think it's time now for questions. I'm pretty sure people would have a lot of questions or clarifications. So please go ahead. If you want Professor Bandyopadhyay to talk more about something, please let him know.
Yes, please. Narasimha.
No, Tushar.
So,
Tushar.
you're Tushar.
Yeah.
So, is it your subjective experiences like Tushar? Anyway, my apology. I can't
Yeah, so
go.
yesterday I asked this question that we have a long pedigree of philosophers who maintain a close relationship between a rational belief and evidence. So if the real issue is of subjective element in belief, can we not connect this likelihood conception of evidence that you provided and connect it with the definition of a rational belief, that you should only believe when the likelihood of one is greater than the likelihood of the other, and maybe connect it together and subjective element would be weeded out.
But you know, the whole consciousness debate is about the subjective experience of consciousness. So then Chalmers, and there he has a lot of followers. He's an excellent philosopher, really. So he has an excellent philosopher. They will be so damn angry. And I'm joking, but they think I have not really tackled anything. But one more second response to your question is that likelihood ratio and the difference between the likelihood ratio and the posterior probability, anything has to do with probability. The difference is that the posterior probability calculation is sensitive to the agent subjective degree of belief captured in the prior probability. So it's always subjective, very likely subjective, but the likelihood ratio, interesting part is that data provide evidence. So if the likelihood ratio is greater than 1, and how much less than equal to 8, there are all the stuff, but I'm just going to the simplest one. When likelihood ratio is greater than 1, what it says that data provide evidence for the first model over the other, or the first hypothesis over the other, which is independent of what the agent thinks about the belief about hypothesis, data, both hypothesis, data, and background information. So this is just capturing a relationship independent of what you believe. So I cannot, yes, of course, I like likelihood ratio. That's one of the account I'm proposing with some of my colleagues. But it cannot capture, so it cannot capture belief at all. But I know the subjective Bayesians, they are doing it, but it cannot capture belief at all. So that's a response.
Maybe, okay.
Yes, please, yes.
Okay. When Mary first time see the red color, this experience is very abstract for her. I mean, this experience is very abstract for her. Now, let's say second person, who is also see that red color, and he or she have a different experience. He is saying that this red color is basically he is actually noting this abstract experience is red color. But what Mary experienced and this person experience is maybe completely different. So how can we calculate the probability that what Mary experienced and this person experience is same or different?
Oh, okay, so probably you have two questions there.
Yes.
So the first question is that you are completely right that what many experiences, very likely many experiences coming out from the room and experience that's red color for the first time, and someone else who might have experienced red color before but now experiences. So each is a subjective experience, and each subjective experience is different from the other, and that's what Chalmers called the subjective conscious experiences. But then the second question you are asking is that how we can talk about the probability is the same. But even though, the question is that in the case of Mary here, H stands for Mary experiences or believes that she has that experience. Mary has the subjective experience, that stands for H. And the data is Mary's own experience, which is again different from say Tushar experience. Tushar has a subjective experience of red color and Tushar's own experience of red color. But yes, of course, there are different kind of experience, but each is subjective experience. So how I can do a formalism so that it can capture both of them in one formula, but without saying that, you know, Tushar's first experience of red color is the same as Mary. I mean, of course, we are not saying, and I don't think Chalmers wants to say it either. So that's my response. Yes, please.
I would like to perhaps build on the question he asked, because I was about to frame it in a different manner. So we know that we can map, let's say, a self-reported subjective experience with, like you said, some form of, you know, neural correlate, some causal deterministic correlate. We can do an EEG, or we can speculate that, all right, if a person sees the color red, if we have 100 people and we independently show them all spots of the color red, then, you know, certain area of the brain seems to activate, and since it's the same part of the brain that seems to activate on all of these people, we can surmise that it is probably the same subjective experience. What if it's not? I think that was kind of the question that he was also asking, which is to say, do I see blue every time I see an apple? And how do I verify that I'm not seeing blue? Indeed. But to build on this question, is there any work that discusses further deconstructing these seemingly undeconstructible subjective experiences, like the color red? So we know that we have emotions associated with colors as well, right? And of course, in folk psychology, using commonsensical words like, okay, when I see red, I think of violence, I also think of love, I also think of passion. These are, of course, commonsensical, you know, words used in common parlance. But we do know that in psychology, things are not as simple. All these emotions are also very complex emotions. They have, you know, they are built of many other smaller emotions that we can't express using everyday language. What I'm trying to ask is, are there any attempts to define subjective experiences, such as the color red, in terms of what makes up the color red? So, which is to say, to again, you know, put it bluntly, if I say that a person doesn't feel that the color red represents passion, if a person doesn't feel that the color red represents love or violence, or doesn't feel that the color red represents any of the other emotions or any of the other subjective experiences associated with red, does that color still remain red in their subjective experience? Am I clear with?
No, not fully clear, but let me try if I am successful. So emotion is also considered to be one of the very subjective experience, and Chalmers agrees that when there is emotion associated with any of them, it is also a subjective experience, and we have no way to experience. We have no way. Neuroscience is not able to explain those subjective experience, the whole thing. So yes, subjective experience of emotion, and it is true that Mary might have a different emotion when she comes out. Maybe she's overwhelmed, she is crying because it's the first time she was experiencing those things. And probably if I come in, maybe I do not have those emotions associated with that. But your point is maybe not just emotion. You are saying that even though maybe we can track those neural correlates and connect it with the multiple Mary star case, you know, checking all those things, still and please correct me if I am following you correctly, that you think still it is possible that the same area is ignited, but actually something other subjective experience is being is having different subjective experience.
Yes, so that is one bit, and the second bit is, so the subjective experience of any color itself, can it be understood purely in terms of how that subjective experience relates to other subjective experiences, or is there any innate dimension to that subjective experience? So which is to say that if I feel a completely different set of emotions when I see the color red, is it just as good as saying that I'm not seeing the color red, that I'm actually seeing another color? because I think that is, again, this is a completely intuitive notion, but that could be connected to this question of what it is to see the color red, you know.
In one sense, I am providing not a full-blown explanation. I'm just saying, in the case of Mary-Star case, I'm just saying that, so here is a way we can track, by neural correlates and what Mary-Star is before she's exported before. So all those things I'm trying, and so that it's not a fluke, we are looking at other type case and see that. But you were saying, even though you can track, but it is possible that different Mary-Star may have a different kind of emotion associated with, or different kind of experience. I'm not completely able to follow it. Maybe we can talk later.
Yeah, sure,
Okay, all right. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just maybe wanted you to clarify on this. So it seems what does some kind of a heavy lifting, you are trying to translate it into the evidence question. And it depends that the evidence question, in order for neuroscience to answer it, the evidence question has to be objective. Or rather, the evidence question has to be answered using an objective method.
Yes.
You are arguing that likelihoods are objective functions.
That's right.
But is that so? As in, like, is that so? For example, if you look at the case of the probability of obtaining a positive result, given the person has tuberculosis, does that not also depend on the reliability of the instrument? So, of course, in cases where we have logical entailment, the people would agree, because you can work out the relations, the probability of D given H becomes 1. But in other cases where people may disagree on the reliability of the particular machine which is, conducting the test, do you think even in such cases we have an objective measure of likelihood? I mean, I'm just taking this from Ehrman, who argues that even likelihoods, and of course, I mean, he's kind of a full-blown subjectivist, even likelihoods are really up for grabs.
So yes, he has the position. So the response to that is that two response. First is that when you are comparing two models related to the data, same data, so we have the background information there too. So background information is the assumption is that the laws of physics, refraction, the laws of how the X-ray machine works and kinds of things. Yes, if there is an error, if you are feeding wrong information, then it won't be affected. But if there is no such thing, then it is not going to affect. That's the first response. So you are saying, but still there is a chance of error. But here we are talking about a case where the same amount, see the background information in both cases, we have still the same background information, because we are trusting the X-ray machine kinds of thing. So in both cases, the same background information working. So if there is a problem with the first D given H1 background information, D given H2 and background information, so background information of that part got cancelled out. So we can still get the objective part of the whole thing. Second thing is that actually objective likelihood function is the only objective function, and is that we can actually mimic so I had a good response. Now I'm not coming up all the whole thing. So why okay, so in 1963 there's a paper by three authors. One is L.J. Savage, Jack, his name is economist, microeconomist, sorry, he's a statistician, his name is L.J. Savage. He wrote the Foundation of Statistics. And two other, one cycle Lindenbaum and one person, so wrote a book, article, exactly title is not coming up. So they even though they're Bayesian, they're saying the objective part is the likelihood function, and there is no subjectivity involved. There are different types of probability involved, but there is no subjectivity involved in objective. So even the Bayesians, those who are subjective, they do think that likelihood function is actually an objective function. So you might say, well, there are disagreements. I'll see, because I thought about that pretty long, how that can be done. And yes, that's how I'll stop here.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yes, please. Yeah.
About the neutrino part.
Hmm?
There is a hypothetical model that neutrino can be faster than light, but Actually, in theoretical physics, it is impossible, and even the evidence, like extreme high energy particle like cosmic rays, which still highest energetic cosmic ray detected in 1992, it also not able to create a neutrino faster than light. But if we see this from the perspective of philosophy, how can we calculate the probability that neutrino can be faster than light? What is the mechanism to calculate it? I mean, if there are any thought process or something like that.
So this is an experimental result. In 2012, there was an experiment conducted in Italy. It's called Opera experiment. The experiment was checking about the neutrino speed, and there are different kinds of neutrinos, left, right, all those things. I forgot all the details, but that's the case. What they found is that neutrino, their experimental result, giving the result is the neutrino traveling faster than the speed of. So it's not the probability, but what they calculated is the significant test. So they calculated how strong is the evidence that neutrino, that hypothesis that neutrino is traveling faster than the speed of light. And they found it's called sigma difference, although, so it's basically 1 out of 1 million chance they could be wrong. So that's how it's not Bayesianism, it's just a straightforward calculation. I mean, those who are sophisticated, they can do that. But so that part is whether the evidence, how strong is the evidence, that part the probability comes in. But the experiment was done not on the probability, the experiment was done whether neutrino are going faster than speed of light. So there are two different issues going on.
No, I am asking that how can we calculate in the possibility that there is a neutrino faster than light in the perspective of philosophy, not the perspective of physics.
So as far as I know, they are doing physics, and they found out the physics is the experiment is all, there is a glitch, there is a problem. So they are not doing philosophy, they are really experimental philosophers. They are not like me, so I don't have the ability to run those experiments. So no, they are physicists. And if you want to know a little bit more, Sean Carroll has a
Quantum field theory.
Huh?
A book of quantum field theory.
So,
I think he's a relativist. He works on relativity.
Yes,
Sean Carroll.
he also works on this part.
So he has on the YouTube he has something, but before he did anything, I actually got the example. Our book came out in 2016. I came up got the example before. So but one of my students pointed out that Sean Carroll did talk about that. But I don't think anything to do with confirmation evidence. That's not Sean Carroll's take on the whole thing. But thank you for the question.
Any other questions or?
No, they are really confused. I'm able to confuse them. Remember what my honorary professor said.
Yes.
If you are sufficiently confused, you will bound to be a philosopher. I think it's a bad advice one professor can give to me when I was a student. So, but please, if this is, I am also struggling to understand Chalmers' position. This is an area I have not worked. I did work on belief evidence. I've been working for a very long time. But so please help me and understand. Yes, please. Yes, please go.
I just want to confirm whatever I have understood. So basically you're saying every experience is subjective. There's no way two people can experience same thing in a same way?
No, I'm not saying that. It is very likely, sure, that so I'm saying the subjective experience of something, like suppose I am having a coffee right now, a subjective experience of coffee, smell, the aroma and all those kinds of things. You are having or you have also having a coffee, probably the same, at least we thought maybe we are having the same coffee, but you have a maybe different experience of the same thing, but still it is subjective experience. So yeah, in that case your experience and my experience could be different, but there could be some experience it is possible that it's not logically impossible that your experience and my experience can be the same. But what Chalmers is saying, that subjective experience, like like seeing a beautiful flower or something, the experience is a very subjective experience which cannot be explained by invoking neuroscience, because it is so subjective. Neuroscience cannot do anything about it.
Oh, so the assumption is the experience is not coming from the biology of the person?
That's right. That's exactly right. So it's not the biology, neural correlates, they are not able to explain anything according to Chalmers. because that is why it's the hard problem, that they cannot explain, according to Chalmers, they cannot explain. And so this is what he says, well, neural correlates happen, but how come they do not disappear, how do not go in the blank? No one knows. So this is what he says. So because neuroscience, according to Chalmers, neuroscience cannot explain that, so that is why this subjective experience is private, subjective, and neuroscience with the third person, they cannot explain, and he doesn't think it will be able to do that. There's a correlation, he will say, that neural correlates and having a particular experience, but it's a correlation, is not causation. So that's why he wrote, you see, that there is no causal distance between Mary's experience and Mary having that experience, so there is no causal distance. Whereas neural correlates, evidence question, there is a causal distance, neural correlates are causing those experiences to happen.
Also, red as an object,
Yeah.
does that have any way of putting itself to the person? Like, is there any universal way of expressing itself for the object? From an object perspective, does the object itself have a way of expressing itself?
So for example, suppose there is a red book, just or red box, small box, and perhaps let's assume that I brought a red box, and everyone is colorblind. They're blindfolded, and like some of us are blindfolded, but some of them are there. They will tell, they will confirm. Say, for example, they will say, well, yeah, it is a red object. They don't. Those who are blindfolded, they are not told that what they have seen. But suppose all of those who are not blindfolded, they all agree, yeah, it's a red object. But the object, people might agree, but the subjective experience of each person, suppose you took your blindfold and experienced the red object, you saw it, next person sitting next to you, she took his blindfold and observed it. So she might not have the same experience, probably very likely it's different experience of the seeing the first, that particular red object. So even though you might agree that it, or those that, it is a red object, same object, but we might have different experience, each of us.
Okay. So there is one common line and there are various degrees how people experience it.
No, very different. The subjective experience vary from person to person, And so just to, dramatize the whole experiment, whole thing, so Chalmers brought that, the thought experiment, that what Mary did not know. So Mary, who knows all the theories about the wavelength and kinds of thing about the color, but she was never exposed to the color red. One day she comes out and she experienced the color red for the first time. That experience of what she experienced, what it's like to color red, is this subjective experience, cannot be deduced, cannot be entailed by the theory she knows so well about. So that's the argument, that why this subjective experience cannot be explained and cannot be entailed by the theory she knows. That's the argument Chalmers is talking about.
One last thing. So if consciousness or the experience is not pointed towards the biology, then where is it being pointed towards?
So she said, Chalmers said, this is the mystery, He did not use the word miracle, but almost he came to that level, that how come that neural correlates happen, the red object is presented, and we have that experience, how come it doesn't go away? So what is that subjective experience? That maybe there's a correlation between the red object brought in front of you and your experience, but that subjective experience is totally subjective. There is no way neuroscience can explain it. That's his point.
And for Chalmers, I think consciousness is a fundamental property of
That's
the world.
right. I mean, interesting, he holds a very panpsychism view. He thinks everything has consciousness, electron, table, chairs, everything, but he didn't push the point much more. So he really thinks everything has some consciousness, but of course he says, well, electron, the kind of consciousness electron has, I do not have, but different stuff. So he has that interesting position, but he did not pursue that point. He thinks that subjective consciousness is that which is fundamental, which is strongly emergent. It's like, in physics we have space-time, all the stuff, those who know physics, they can correct me. There are some fundamental stuff, so we have to admit that consciousness is a strongly emergent property, and we have to take it as a basic thing. We cannot explain them. This is the fundamental stuff. That's his position.
I don't know, I find some relation with how Hindu perspective of life explains these things. Like they see consciousness being everywhere. Like the Vedanta perspective says that there's only one thing and the God or the Purusha being spread all over. That kind of perspective they give.
Chalmers is not a religious person, but actually he is very open to the whole thing. He thinks that the different ways, different religion, explore all the inner experience. Maybe we need to mind that thing. So, but I remember watching little bit about a conversation with some Indian guru, with due respect, I'm not making fun of it. Him, so that Indian guru and Steven Pinker, they have a conversation. Steven Pinker is a more science person, and so I have not observed the whole thing, but I just saw that. I'm forgetting the Indian guru's name. He's very well known. I don't know, he's called Sadhguru or someone. So yes, so there are some interesting stuff. But Chalmers is not a religious person, but somehow the way consciousness, he talks about consciousness, it sounds like it's a really mysterious thing, and it's almost a miracle. But I have not seen Chalmers use the word miracle regarding consciousness. Probably want to distance himself from the religious leaders kind of thing. Any other question? Yes, please.
Yeah, so in talking about subjective experience, any kind of subjective experience would always be influenced by every single other experience that you've had in your past, whether big or small, and based on what knowledge one person has. So in this case, for example, there's Mary, who's never seen the color red before, and but there's still some bias in the sense that she would have different other experience that we don't know of right now. And when she sees the color red for the first time, there would be some influence or some other experience that is influencing how she experiences this color right now. See, for example, what object is shown as red. So wouldn't the experience of that, say for example, a red box. Now her experience of seeing a box, now wouldn't that be mixed with the red box she's seeing now? So she's not only seeing the color red, but also the experience of, say, the box is also, it's going to be mixed with it. So, and in this example, she knows everything about light is what's told. So she knows there is something called red. She has all that knowledge. So that could also influence her experience maybe another example where this person has no idea she has no idea what red is, never heard of this color, has no knowledge in that area. Now, if such a person is exposed to the color red, that would be a different subjective experience. Or a person who's not going to be told that she's going to be exposed to the color red now, and then she sees it, then that would be a different experience. So it's what I'm trying to say is it would be close to impossible to ever get a pure experience of the color red.
I understood. Actually, you have very close to 3 questions, and so the first question is that Mary, what Mary read about red color. Sure, Mary never experienced red color before. What Mary read, heard about, or somebody else has a different kind of experience. Then first question is that, so what she read or heard about, that is going to affect when she experiences color red. It is possible that when she exposed to the color red first, maybe there is some background information could do that. Second thing is that somebody else who has a different sort of experience, again, suppose never experienced color red, she might have a little different subjective experience of the color red. So but still, that does not dislodge or challenge Chalmers' view, because each is a subjective experience of color red. So they're different, but so Chalmers says, yeah, but they could be different, but that's why there's a subjective experience. That's the first one. Second thing is that Mary never experienced the color red before. So she heard about all those things, but she never experienced the color. So this is the first time she was exposed to the color red. That is important. But there is one more I'm missing. You asked one more thing. So I thought there are 3 parts. I'm forgetting.
She's not being told that she's going to be exposed to the color red. So in the first case, so she's going to be, she's told, okay, you're going to see the color red now. So there might be other like emotions that's interpreted.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
excited, I've never seen this before.
Yes,
Whereas
yes.
in the other case, she's only seen black and white, and all of a sudden there's this new thing. So wouldn't that state of mind be different in?
But of course, I won't be surprised, But still, it is not going to challenge or contest David Chalmers' view, because each is a different subjective experience, So still very much a subjective experience of what it's like to see red. Yeah, of course, she could be influenced by what she was told. Maybe she was very excited. She was told that somebody told you never experienced red color, but yes, you know all the theories. You were a very smart woman. Maybe she was excited. She was coming out. Sure, but still, it is a hard subjective experience coming first. Yeah, that's right. It's possible. Anything else?
Like even if it was a newborn baby that was seeing it for the first time, like the instincts that are built up over the years in humans would also be different for each lineage of person also, and like that might also affect.
That might, but a question is that are you talking about just the baby coming out? Needs to have some physiological development, at least something to develop those things. But I have seen, but I don't think my direct grandchildren. I don't have any, but my brother's grandchild, whose video I saw, who's like 2-3 hours old, and I don't know. It is probably there is no reason I'm saying he's genius, not at all, but. I don't know if the health, everything has changed, food, but what I saw in 2 hours from her birth, that video I still remember, it seems like he was like 3 months, 4 months old. But I don't know, is it my, but other people who saw the same thing. So the question is that I do not know how much, probably they cannot see anything. Maybe I thought not I, some of my relatives, they saw that. So now he was 6 years old, much more active and kinds of thing. But it's really surprised me. It's a couple of 1 or 2 hours old baby. I saw the video. It seems like he was like 3 months old. So I don't know. But anyway, I'm dragging. I had a discussion. Anything else?
I have
Yes.
another trivial question. So, why is just a hard problem of consciousness? Why are there not are there similar hard problems such as consciousness? Because as neuroscience can't explain consciousness, but about something like human behavior. Is there a hard problem of human behavior? Because neuroscience also can't entirely explain human behavior. In fact, almost the entirety of humanities is a practice to study human behavior. Is there a similar hard problem of human behavior? Is there a hard problem of morality? Are there similar hard problems?
So, I do not know, but the philosophers are very much drawn to this subjective idea of consciousness, and there was a paper by in early 70s, one of Chalmers' former colleague. His name is called "What Is Like to Be a Bat." Thomas Nagel has a paper, and so he started that idea. What is like to be a bat? Nobody else can explain because the species specifically. So maybe other people have started, but definitely that started some of the stuff. And then Jackson has a paper, and Jackson probably a couple of papers. And there's a huge discussion about what made he did not know. And so there's different titles, and so that kind of leading to the whole thing that, and Chalmers studied mathematics, almost probably got his PhD from Oxford, left it, and then came to Indiana University. And by '95, I also graduated at the same time. So by then he already developed. So subjective part of consciousness is really got going, and people. So maybe philosophers are being humanists. They have this drawn to this idea. Without, I'm not making fun of that, but I think, philosophy, subjective consciousness, that part is very important. And so the other could be other problems, but that is the problem stuck philosophers, and looks like there are a lot of followers to that. You want to go?
Just think about, could we see the debate, like old debate with free will and determinism along similar lines then? Because it seems, so the structure seems to be similar, that if we were to know everything in case of Mary's subjective experience, if Mary knows everything that it is there to know scientifically about perception, does she still get a new understanding or new knowledge when she sees color red for the first time? If we transpose it this, if we know everything that there is to know scientifically about human behavior, can we still say that we have this freedom of making decisions? So could we then see the problem of free will as analogous to the hard problem of consciousness?
And won't it be the case that almost all philosophical debates on which there is widespread disagreement can be mapped onto the system?
As long as, if there is something to do with scientific explanation, then could have a
So this is nice, but actually, one of Chalmers' strong critic was Daniel Dennett, actually. And Daniel Dennett passed away just 6-8 months ago. One of my colleague, Gordon Britton, very, very good friend. So Chalmers, Gordon Britton, who is the guy? Dennett. Daniel Dennett thinks that determinism is actually, so things are determined actually. So we just, and here's an explanation for the whole thing. And there are some neuroscientists, of course, like Sam Harris, and there are others. And there's also a Stanford neuroscientist also thinks that. Yeah, so they also think. Yeah, so there are some similarities, but I have not thought of it. But that's nice. It could be, who knows? Maybe there are hard problems. But question is that how we define hard problems. So if scientists cannot solve the problem, that will be hard problems. Then I don't know. But yeah, okay. Any other question? Asking question is good, because if you think your question is not good, so maybe you're asking me some question, your friend or someone sitting next to you may have the same question, and maybe there you will just nail me down and find out on a big error in my paper. It's possible. So you can just ask me whatever question you have. It doesn't mean I know the answer, but you can ask me.
We need to talk about transitory, but we'll do it later.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's all done now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for participation, because this has gone on for rather longer than we usually do, and you have actually received a lot of questions. It's not really as lively as this.
No, thank you.
Usually. So it's good that people are confused. Now they may turn into philosophers' terms. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we extend our very warm gratitude to Professor Bandyopadhyay, and hope he comes back again and again with more very hard problems. And we are waiting to be further confused and have more discussions. Thanks very much.